Hi, I'm Brian English, forum name Hyperbytes, and in this module we're going to start to pull together everything that we've learned about Couch and PouchDB, and then we're going to integrate it in with MySQL, allowing us to integrate the idea of schema and schemaless databases. And we're going to do that by creating a fictional review company, a company that manages information, matches it to products, and in the form of reviews, similar to Google Reviews and Trustpilot. So this is a hybrid of MySQL, CouchDB and PouchDB, and I'm just going to quickly run through what we're doing, where we're going, before I get down to the nuts and bolts of how to do that within Wappler. So we're going to start with an administrator. That administrator will have certain functions. That administrator, first of all, will add products to the products database. So that product will be added into a MySQL database, and I've used a convention that if it's blue, it's MySQL, if it is green, it is Couch, and if it is yellow, it is Pouch. So they're going to input that information into that products database, it's a MySQL database. And that will then be replicated manually to the Couch database, which we hold under products. Now technically we could just author directly into that Couch database, but I'm thinking bigger plan. Probably if this was a massive big company like Google, they would probably have multiple Couch servers and multiple forms of replication. So I'm going to add that level of SQL to Couch to Pouch. Also it teaches the techniques, and really that's what this module is all about. So having replicated that to a CouchDB, we have this automatic replication that Couch and Pouch offer bi-directional replication. So by adding that product ID into the admin console, a bit of code will push that into the CouchDB, and then that will immediately be taken to the PouchDB, provided that that person is online, and they will see that product pop up on their database. The other thing, of course, is you need to be able to check to see the reviews that are placed there to make sure that they're fair, appropriate, etc. So working in reverse there, we would have had that review come in from a PouchDB database on a device. That will be automatically replicated into that Couch database, and then at some point, then somewhere, there will be a manual replication of that Couch database back into the MySQL database. And of course we need to ensure that these are linked in with the user who is making that review, and of course the product to which that review applies. Contributor, well, a contributor needs to add the reviews to the product, so they'll be able to log into the system, so we'll know who they are. They will select a product, so we'll know which product they are talking about, and they will submit a review via PouchDB on their device, whether it be mobile, computer or whatever, and obviously that is going to be linked to the logged in user's user ID, so that'll be the person doing it, and the product for which they are providing that review. That gets auto-replicated to our CouchDB, and then finally we'll have a replication to our MySQL database, and that will be a manual replication. So let's have a look at the overall application and the data flow within it. We're going to start with a simple users table, which we will use for login purposes, and that will then be able to reference who is currently logged in to the system and is submitting reviews or doing the data management. We're going to have a product table, and that's going to replicate to our CouchDB, and then of course that's going to carry that product ID down, and then we're going to have that automatic replication between that Couch and PouchDB database. Next, obviously, we have our reviews, the title and content of the review, by and who that's been by and to which product that applies, and that is obviously linked from the user ID that the person is there, from which the person is logged in, and also the product ID that they have selected. That's going to then automatically replicate to our CouchDB, and then we're going to have a manual replication back into that MySQL DB at administrative headquarters. Now there will be a couple of extra little fields I will be adding in here and there just to allow the manual replications, because we don't really need to worry at all about Couch and Pouch. They do everything for us, but obviously we need to know that the records have been replicated either way from Couch or Pouch, from Couch to MySQL and vice versa. So we'll be adding a few flags in there as we go through, but basically that is the conceptual illustration of the system that we're going to develop. So let's move on to the actual development, which is what we're all here for, isn't it? Okay, so we've covered our data structures. I've outlined how the application will work and how the data will be shared between our CouchDB databases and MySQL. But what I haven't done at this point is address the issue of replication between MySQL and Couch. Now Couch does support changelogs. In fact, it uses changelogs internally all the time, and it also can support webhooks. But at the moment, as of WAPLA 6 Beta 2, we do not have access to that CouchDB changelog, and there is no facility to be able to set up a webhook, so we can perhaps have a callback based on events similar to MySQL, and insert, a delete, and update, so we could send a callback that would then activate some sort of replication to MySQL. So have to come up with an alternative solution. The initial thought was, well, a stale record marker, we can simply mark that record to say that it's been added or updated. But of course, thinking about that further, we can't insert a stale marker into a deleted record, and I really didn't want to go down the not really deleting it, just putting a marker on, hiding it, and allowing a scheduler to delete it later line, which was the other alternative. So last was to look at a changelog. Keep our own manually maintained changelog. It's pretty easy to do. We're going to make a small change to the flow for the insert action that we developed initially, because the action flow does not allow us to be able to detect the last insert ID. But if we change that to a page flow and then run that page flow from an action, we can do that. And then we can implement that changelog, and that can then be passed by the API schedule and the data synchronized. So that's a methodology that we're going to use at this stage for replication. If we get new features added in later versions of 6 beta, then I'll certainly look at showing you how to implement them. But for the moment, this is a structure that we will be using throughout this module. So let's make a start on building this application. Remember that we're looking at input of notes into Pouch. That will be assigned a user ID for the person adding them. The notes will be regarding a product, so they'll have a product ID that will go from Pouch to Couch automatically, automatic replication. We're then going to replicate those. Sorry, we're not going to replicate the product at that point. They will remain static within the Couch database. We're going to have those notes submitted to via Pouch to Couch. We're going to manually replicate those changes to our MySQL database, and then we also have the option if those may be edited and replicated back into our Couch database. Why have I made the structure so complex? Why don't I just do everything in the middle with Couch databases? Well, to be honest, no reason at all why you couldn't. The purpose of me doing it this way is purely because I want to create a tutorial on how to integrate the two technologies. Simple as that. So let's start with, first of all, we already have our notes within our collections. in our DB connection, I need to create another collection here, and we need to call that product. Get an automatic ID allocated. That's your pouch couch product, a unique ID. I need to add a new field, and that's going to be product name. But I also want to know what the MySQL ID of that product as well, so I can keep them in sync. So that will be the product ID. Sorry about that. I'll just throw in as a little casual one here. I had eye surgery a couple of weeks ago, and my vision is still pretty blurred, so I'm sometimes I have a problem actually seeing what I'm typing. I know I'm a terrible typist anyway, but I'm even worse at the moment. That's close enough. Right, so added our product, we've got our notes. I'm going to run you now through some extra pages that I've created, which are bog standard Wappler pages. I really see there's no need to show you how to do these again. We have a login page, we have a logout page, a notes page, and a products page. I have an admin function which has an index page, a products page, and a reviews page. Now those product forms are blank forms. There's no server actions or anything attached to them. I just thought you really didn't need to watch me building a bog standard form. So let's make a start. Let's look at building our system and looking at our replication. To do that, we also need to have our MySQL tables. So if I just close those collections and go to my MySQL connection, you can see I have notes. So we have, each note will have its own MySQL ID and title and content, and we're also going to replicate that couch ID as well into MySQL, so we can keep the two in synchronization. We have a simple product table, and of course we have a users table for people to be able to log in. So let's start with the very basics then. I'm going to go into adding a new product because we have no products in the system at the minute, I don't believe. Will say at this point I'm now on Wappler 6 beta 3. There were some pretty naughty bugs that I came across in beta 2, which means that I have actually rolled back on this course about 30 minutes. I think I've undone all of the changes that I'd made in that 30 minutes, but don't be too surprised if at some point I go, oh, that's left over from a previous run through. So right, we have our new product. That is a single field, product ID, a product name, which matches our database. We're going to now look at what happens when that form is submitted to our server, through a server action. So what we need is an API action. I'm just going to create a folder called products. I'm going to add an API action, and I'm going to call that create product. I'm not going to put security on these. I could stuff security restricts on all of them. I'm really not going to do that at the moment. If you don't know how to do that, there's plenty of other tutorials on that. So first action, we're going to be sending details from our form being in our views, admin, products. The form insert is the insert form that I'll be using, and I'm just going to pull those posts through. There's only product name, and then I'm going to insert that product into my MySQL database. Standard stuff, we've all done it many times before. I'll just give that a unique name. So MySQL. I'm going to select that table, products, and I'm going to insert that into the table. Simple stuff, we've done that before, but now I also want to push that into our CouchDB database, which it effectively will then replicate it to the pouch as well. There isn't a special database action for that. We use the bog standard ones that we use day to day. We're going to add another action. We're going to add another insert action. But in this case, we're going to switch our connection to DB connection, and then we're going to do our insert. And now, because we've switched our connection, you'll see we're now showing our Couch collections rather than our MySQL tables. So I'm going to insert this into product. I'm going to insert the product name from that post. But I also want to replicate the ID that product got into there as well. And that, of course, is the previous insert identity field. I'm just going to... And that now should mean that if we post product name to that API action, it will insert it into the MySQL database, and also it will insert it into the Couch database. So we go back to our product screen, we go into our form. Sorry, you're going to have to excuse me, I'm actually having a little bit of trouble seeing here. There's our form insert. I knew it was there somewhere. Let's have a look at our actions. I've actually still got an old success action in there by the looks of it. We're going to say success. I'm also going to then, no, at this stage I'm not. I'm just going to say success. So that means that our product has been inserted. I know I should put an error, etc. in. I'm going to pray I don't need them. The other thing that I need in product is an all products API action, and that's going to be because that's going to feed, my apologies, this select here. So that all products is going to do nothing more than literally be a database action query, and we're going from the DB, that's our MySQL connection, we're going to go to our products database, and we're going to add everything in. And I'll just sort it by the product name just so it's a little bit easier to find things. So let's save that. Let's go into products. Let's add our DB connection in now. Data, server connect, con products, server action, and that's going to be all products. So we now have that all products feed, and we're going to use that as a source for that select. Data source, products, data query, and we're going to show the text field of the product name and the value field of the product ID. Let's save that. I'm now going to go back into our previous insert form because I want to add one extra stage to that. What I want to do is, after we've successfully loaded, I just want to refresh that products list automatically. So save that. And now I think it's probably a good time just to have a look at us pushing that product into the system and just make sure that everything works as it should. Oops, almost forgot. We need to also just make sure that that server connect form connects to the correct server action. Let's save that. So we've got our server connect form. I'm going to call that create products with that product name. It's going to insert that into MySQL. It's going to insert that into Pouch, hopefully. So let's fire it up in the browser. Let's add a medium widget. let's add product. Got that success message. So hopefully that means that we have everything there, and you can see that now that has appeared in our drop down, which is exactly what we wanted to happen. So let's now look at how we're going to make that also be updatable. So I'm going to create a new API action. I'm going to call that update product. I'm going to pull those settings through from that page again. So we've got our admin products. In this case, we're using the update form. Let's import those variables through the product name and the product ID, and then now we're going to just do the simple update in the same way as we did the insert. So on our MySQL connection, that's our DB connection products, we're going to update the product name based on its product ID. Very, very basic stuff. Now we're just going to do another update, product update. Let's now pick our product collection this time. And we're going to update the product name, but in this case we're going to use also the product ID being the product ID that we sent. Simple stuff, no problem at all there. We can very easily do that. So now let's take a look at how we do that within the form. So back in our products page, we have our select. We did notice probably that the select doesn't have any action on the product name. In other words, it's not showing the product name. So I think probably the first thing we want to do is that. So we're going to bind that to the text entry within that input. So we're going to say the value of that is going to be our select input selected text. That means we'll then bind that to the select. Now we need to do the update, so we're going to go into our form update. We've got a success action in there, which I'm quite happy with. It just simply does a refresh of the connection and gives us a message. We need to make sure that we have the correct server action selected, and of course it's a server action. So your server connect form. I really can't think off the top of my head what else we'll need there. So I guess it's time to give that a try. So let's fire it up in the browser. We have our medium widget version 2. We're going to update our product. We have a success message, but you notice that wasn't refreshed. I had to manually refresh it, and that's just simply I forgot the very obvious. At the end of that, we need to do a products reload. So if I save that, let's just fire that up again. Let's make our project widget v2 now back to an ordinary product widget, and you can see that update is done. So we've done that on the MySQL side. You're probably thinking, well, what about Couch? How are you going to prove how the Couch has been updated? Well, I'm going to do that next within the Couch dedicated admin console. So I'm back in Wappler. I'm going to go into our resource manager. Click on CouchDB. I'm going to reveal that admin password. I'm now going to click on the cog, click on admin panel. Username is admin. Paste in that password. We're going to look at the MyDB. Now we've got the product collections, and if I click that and table, we can now see that we have that widget there. That's actually an old entry. If you notice, that's ID1. That's probably been from a previous test. So if our mini widget, we can see that has been replicated into our CouchDB, which means it's now available on the front end through our PouchDB. So I guess that's probably the place to go next. Let's have a look at connecting through our App Connect page for our users to be able to look at that list of products. So I'm into the products page that I'd created earlier, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to be adding our data connection to our PouchDB. Remember, that's the equivalent of you doing a server connect on a traditional database. And then I'm going to then do a pouch view, which effectively pulls the data at the end of that connection down. If I save that now, we have that collection. If I can go into that column now, I'm going to use the generator. I'm going to generate a table. I'm going to use the pouch data view as the source of that table. And I'm just going to leave that fairly raw so we can see exactly what's going on. And there we are. Save that. Now if I fire that up just to show you the live version, you can see now our input of our product has pushed it into our MySQL database. That has then pushed it into the Couch database, which is automatically replicated to the Pouch database, which we're viewing on our screen now. So what we need to do now is link our products list to our previous notes page, so we can leave a review effectively for a product attributed to a particular user. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just add a button into this column. So I'm going to have to add another cell in there and another header in. Within that cell, I'm going to put in an anchor button. And we'll have that leave review. Let's get rid of that cell text there. And I better give that a bit of styling so we can actually see what we're doing. So there's our leave review. And what we're going to do is we're going to send basically the product ID and the current user. And actually we don't need to send the current user, we just send the product ID to the notes page, and then we're going to make a modification to the notes page to allow us to save the product ID and the current user. So we have our routing, we have our notes page, and I'm just going to add now product ID as a parameter to that. I'm going to go into main, I'm going to go into app, and I'm going to define query parameters, and I'm going to add product ID to there. Let's save that. Now I'm going to go back into our product list, leave review, and I'm going to tell it to use dynamic attributes of link, and we're going to use the root, and we're going to send a notes page, and we're going to send the product ID from the repeat within that current table that we're looking at. So I'm going to send the product ID from the table body repeat. That should now send that to our notes page. So if we go and open that old notes page up now, hopefully everything's still hunky-dory with that. We've got our notes page, we've got now we need to be able to pick up that ID, and we need to be able to know who's logged in. So we're going to go into the add note action. I'm not going to allow editing, I don't think, of notes after that entry. Well, at least I'm not going to do it in this because it's just another repeat. So if I use the add note in that action, we need to now go into our flow, and now we realize that we have a little bit of a problem because after this insert, I want to be able to know the ID that has been allocated to that insert. In the same way as we used to identity insert within a server action, I want to be able to do that on this PouchDB insert that we're doing. And actually you can't do that within a flow which is directly from an action like a dynamic event. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a little change here. I'm going to go into my app and I'm going to create a page flow. Within that page flow, I'm now going to add that action. I'm going to go into my database actions. I'm going to do a pouch insert, using the DB connection. And my insert options are going to be into our notes collection. And I'm going to be inserting the value of our fields, so our title value, and we're going to be inserting our when I find it our content value. That's great, because up till now that's all we've needed to do. That's not a problem, so we can just close that. And now off our add note action, our add button, I'm actually going to get rid of that now, and I'm just going to simply tell it to run that page flow. So we're doing exactly the same thing, just we're using a slightly different order. Why am I doing that? Well, if we go back to our page flow now, I've got a sneaky feeling Wappler's just about to crash here. Just give me one moment. In case you're wondering, yes, Wappler did crash there and I've reopened it. So in that button, we're now going to, instead of having a flow attached to that, all we're going to do now is run that page flow. Nice and simple. Why do we do that? Well, if we go into our page flow now and edit our flow, we have our pouch insert, but if we actually add another action, let's just say at this point we're just going to I don't know, pop up a notification. You'll see why I'm doing this soon. You'll see that now that last ID from the insert is now actually exposed within the flow, so we can use that to do that. So we'll take that out, just tidy up that flow for the moment. We want to clear the form, we want to close the modal itself, and that should be all we need to do at that stage. So there's our basic action. We're back to where we were. We should be able to add that note now, and exactly the way as before. Let's give it a try then. Add note. There we are, we've added that note into our PouchDB, which is now replicated into our CouchDB, and we can also edit that as well. So we're happy with that until now. We're fine. What we now need to do is to integrate that changelog that I talked about, that we're going to use within MySQL to be able to detect what has changed since the last synchronization. So I'm back in the resource manager, sorry, the database manager. We now need to just update the notes collection to allow us to store that product ID and user ID. So I'm just going to add product ID, obviously that's going to be an integer, and we need to add the user ID, which again is going to be a number. Let's apply that. We now have our collection updated, which means now if we go back into our add note modal, add action, sorry, no, we actually don't need to do that. We go into our flow, and we can now update that flow to include the product ID and the user ID. Where does the product ID come from? Well, if you remember, we've sent that as a parameter. Where does the user ID come? Well, I've got that who am I server flow, and that returns, actually I've got a global identity set up within globals in the workflows themselves, or I could have picked it up from the current user who am I query. Either would work, either would do the same. Now we should be able to see that the user ID and the product ID will appear in here. So I'm just going to add a header in there. I'm going to add another cell in there. How did we set the values in these? Exactly the same in a text as you would have done with anything else. So a dynamic attributes display in a text, and then we're going to have the repeat within here. Now you see we haven't, that collection isn't updated from the query. Okay, so I think I worked that one out. To get that to refresh, I actually have to go into our expression and just reset that. So we're in our PouchDB view data, we click on that, and now I find that if I go into here we can actually see that data now. So it's obviously just an internal refresh issue. So we now have our product ID in there, and in here we have our user ID, which actually, yeah. I'm going to save that. Now those entries actually have these set, so they're going to remain blank. Just give that a hang so we know what's in there. Right, so where am I going from here? I need to update that flow. I need to edit that flow. I need to edit that insert. No, I don't, because I've already done that. So I've just confirmed that that all works. And I think now is probably a good time for me to fire that up and just see how this works. So I'm in my products page. I'm going to open that up in the browser. I'm going to work with product 31. I want to leave a review. We can see that parameter of 31 has been passed over there. I'm currently logged in because you can see there just grayed out is my email address, which has come from the who am I. So I'm going to add a note, next note with IDs. So if I add that, you see now we've actually got that product ID and user ID displayed in a table. So that's exactly what we want. Now we need to look at how we're going to manage this changelog so that we can tell MySQL what has changed within our Couch Pouch database. So if we look at our database manager and have a look at our notes tables in each of the collections, obviously in our MySQL database we have the notes table, and we have the various fields, and we actually have that couch ID, replication ID contained within that action as well. So we have a common field between our notes, and we also have that obviously as an ID within our couch collection ID, notes ID. So we have a common field, we have somewhere where we can replicate things, so we can actually match those database records based on that field itself. What I want to do is I want to add a collection into here. I want to add a new collection, and that collection we'll call changelog. Obviously it will add its own ID in. Our new field will be our notes ID, and that will be a copy of the couch ID that we have here, and the probably a bad choice of name, I don't changing it, and that in the notes itself. And we also need to know the change type, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to put in there D for deleted, U for updated, C for created. So I'm going to now add that in. We now have our changelog. So now what we need to do is in each of the actions that we have within our notes, there's only 3 of them. We have add note, we have edit note, and we have delete note. We also need to push an entry into that changelog at the same time. So let's do our add note first. We can do that from our page flow. We go edit flow, and we can then just add a second insert, and we're going to insert this time into our DB connection. Now that would be great at this stage if everything went to plan. Unfortunately there is a little issue at the moment in relation to the picker for the pouch inserts, because if I open that, I should now be able to click page flows, data, and get the last ID, but it's not showing it at all. So we need to think about how we can get around that. It's very easy, because we know that that is called insert. Say this is how to get around a bug, I'm afraid. Insert.identity is what we're actually looking for, and that will hopefully insert the current identity or the last identity that was allocated to that previous stage. So I will report that as a bug to the Wappler team. I've only just found it myself 5 minutes ago. So that's a creation. Sorry, I should have told you. I put a C in there just for create record, and we're going to save that. And that hopefully will deal with our add note. When we have our update note, remember everything is acted on in a click event. We've got our update there. We're going to add, just check those update actions. Let's have a look and see what we've got there. We've got the title and the content only, and the condition is our pouch data detail ID. So we can use that elsewhere. We can now add action. We can go to database actions. We can do a pouch insert. We can choose our DB connection. We can go into our changelog. Our notes ID is going to be a detail data ID, and the change that we made in this case is an update. Save that, and then last of all we're in our modal delete again on that buttons action, I'm going to add another action. I'm going to add a database insert or PouchDB insert. Oh, I will forget to select that. We're going to again into changelog. Notes ID will be from our data detail. If you remember, that's how we selected our delete as well, and then our changelog, it's going to be a D. I'm going to save that. Let's save those changes, and I guess we now need to think about seeing how that works. So let's give it all a try. I'm going to open our products page. I'm going to click leave a review. I'm going to then add a note. I'm going to add a note. That's great. That's added in as we'd expect. And we can edit it as we expect. And then lastly, we can also delete it as we can expect. So fingers crossed now, if we go into our CouchDB data interface, admin panel, open, and you'll see now we have those changelog events there, and we can see the unique ID, which is the same in each case because each is the same record. We can see we created it, we updated it, and then we deleted it. So there's our changelog, and we can now use that to manage our synchronization between CouchDB and MySQL. So let's just quickly remind ourselves, why do we need this replication? Well, of course, Pouch and Couch will look after itself. It's a self-replicating system. We've been able to push the product updates from the management console and MySQL to the Couch database. Because the Couch database is running on a cloud, it is always going to be accessible. And then it will replicate down to the PouchDB when that client has a data connection. But of course, at the client end, particularly if they had a mobile device, so they may not need a data connection to actually run the application, they can never be sure that that PouchDB database has a connection to Couch at any one time. So we can't just push that update also out to MySQL like we did in the reverse direction. We have to defer that until that connection arrives or a connection is made. So that's why we need the replication, and to deal with that, it works really easy. So let's pop over into our API actions. Now I'll just say at this stage, normally I would do this within a schedule, and then run that schedule every minute, 5 minutes, whatever is really appropriate to the data flow, the server load that you have. But I'm going to actually do this with a standard API action, purely because I want to talk you through it stage by stage, show you the output stage by stage, which you can't really do within the schedule. So I'm going to create a server action. I'm going to call that doSync. The first thing we're going to do within that is we're going to get our changelog. So I'm going to go into database actions, I'm going to do a query, and we're going to create a query that's going to pull in all of those. I can tell you now, we need to switch over to DB connection. Let's pick our changelog. Let's add all fields, and that's all we want. We certainly don't want to change the order because we want to treat this as a FIFO stack, first in, first out. So we're leaving it at that. So that allows us to get our data, our changelog. So after that, we're just going to have a very simple repeat. We're going to repeat through that query to process each entry within that query. So what are we going to do with it? Well, once we've gone in, first of all, I want to find the associated notes entry to that changelog. Now, I appreciate that if it's been deleted, it's not going to be there. That's all really part of the design, to be honest. So I'm going to do a single query. I want to find, must remember to change that to DB connection. I want to find in the notes collection, I want to find the note that corresponds where its note ID is equal to the changelog's notes ID, which is effectively the relationship between them. And we also need to make sure you choose it from the right place. That should of course be coming from the repeat. Okay, I'm going to save that, but I'm going to call that query current note. So let's hit save. I'm just going to show you what the output is of this before we go any further. So there we are. We hit that and we can see there's our 6 entries that we have in our changelog, showing a create, an update, a create, an update, a create, and a delete. And we can see that as it cycles through, we get the names of the items and the content, sorry, the title and content of the review. We get that for the first 2 entries, and then the last ones are going to return null because of course they have that record has been deleted in this final stage, so that entry no longer actually exists in the Couch database, therefore it obviously won't appear within that query. So right, back into our WAPLAN now, and what we can do now is we can process our changes section by section. So we'll deal with our create first, I think. Sorry, no, we'll do the delete first. So the first thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to just check to see what the value of the change was, so the change type, and in this case I'm looking for anything which has a change type of D for delete. This is the easiest one of the lot. If it's a D for delete, then all we need to do is replicate that deletion that would have taken place in the Couch database to our MySQL database. So it's a very simple, straightforward database delete from our MySQL database, and we're going to be deleting the notes where the Couch ID is equal to the ID within the current repeat. In other words, that's the change. Sorry, it's not the ID, it is the notes ID within the changelog, because notes ID in the changelog refers to the ID of the note that has been changed. I know it sounds complicated. So that's straightforward enough. We've done the deletion. Let's now try the creation. So again, I'm going to add a condition in. That condition this time will be that change type is equal to C for create. But we need to make sure that record still exists within the Couch database, because it may have subsequently been deleted. And if that's the case, we really don't want to create it because we've got no data there to create it with. So I'm going to do a second condition there. I'm also going to say, and also if condition, the query current note as content. We don't need to say anything further because it's a single record query. So if the change type is C and that record still exists, then we're going to just insert a new record into our MySQL database. So we're selecting our notes collection, and we're simply going to pull those over from the current note query that has pulled that from the Couch database. Content, our Couch ID is the ID of that record, so that is this ID. want the user ID, we want the product ID, and we want when, now. So there's our insert routine now, and if we save that, we'll just want output for your benefit as well. Then the last thing we need to do is to deal with our update. So adding an action, core conditions. Again, we're now looking for that change type within the repeat to be equal to you. Again, we don't want to do an update if that record has been subsequently deleted. So I'm also going to check that that record still exists. It hasn't been deleted by a subsequent delete action. And if that still exists, then we're going to do an update. Database update. We're going to select our notes table. And I'm going to make the assumption that these records don't need updated because I'm probably not going to change the user ID or the product to which this refers. So all I'm all going to worry about at this stage is changing the title and the content. You can change them all if you want. My head, the logic of this system is that once a review has been done, it will stay attached to the individual who created it, and it will stay to the product to which it applies. So we don't need to change those anymore. Content. So there's our data now. That should be our the basics of our logic completed. Obviously we're going to need to clean up that changelog at the end, but until we've just confirmed everything's working okay, I'm not going to do that. So I'm just going to have a look and see what effect this whole API action has now. So let's run this in the browser. Let's have a look at the output. We've got our query with our 6 changes. We have our repeats. We see the insert. We see an update, an insert, and an update. And then we have our current note. Wasn't inserted, created because it no longer exists in the database because it has subsequently been deleted. So if we go into Wappler, if we look at our notes, view edit our data, fetch our data, we can see that sure enough those first 2 reviews have been added to the MySQL database, but that third one which has been deleted hasn't. So that is effectively our 2 databases are now nicely in sync, which is what we wanted to achieve. Having just done a little bit of extra checking at the end of that last section of the video, I've noticed a small mistake in the update. We did a very good job of telling it which fields to update, but in actual fact we completely forgot to give the condition for that update. What we need is that couch ID within the MySQL must repeat or must equal the notes ID within the changelog. So you notice there were some zeros, and last time we fired that up with the browser. I'm just going to get rid of the data. I'm going to go back into do sync. I'm going to run that again, and hopefully now we should see the updates have actually affected. There must have been some extra records in there from tests. We can see now the updates are working correctly, and if we go into our notes database, fetch our data, we can see that we've got the records. We've got them duplicated purely because I've run this a couple of times, and of course we're not deleting that changelog at the end, so those changes have been implemented twice. We delete them out, run that again, back into our notes, fetch our data. You can see we only have 2 records. So all we need to do now is clean up that log, and everything seems to be working as it should. Now it may seem it was only a few seconds, but in actual fact we've jumped ahead from the end of that last segment by 5 months. Why? Well, it was a small bug within the beta 6, which unfortunately slipped through the net and didn't get resolved until actually after final release, which means that this last little section of the video could not be produced. Amazing, this is only going to be literally a minute or two to close the video, but I had no choice on that. So basically where we were, we've done our update server action, our synchronization. We're dealing with the deletions, the creations and the updates. All we actually need to do is clean up that changelog. So what we're going to do is within this repeat, we're going to add one simple action. We're going to add a database delete, and within that delete we're going to be deleting on the DB connection, because we're talking about deleting something from our CouchDB database. We're going to go into our delete options. We're going to select our changelog, and what we need to do is change the entry in the changelog where the notes ID matches the notes ID within that repeat that we are currently working with. So I'm going to save that. That was really what was held up this video for 5 months or whatever, unfortunately. I apologise for that, but it was obviously out of my control. Now the next problem we have is that what I wanted to do at this point was to then just show you this whole application working in a multi-screen, so you could see how the changes replicated across the databases in near enough real time. Unfortunately, other time constraints now affect me, and while we've covered everything that we needed to cover, I really just don't have time to do that. And if I was to wait, we'd now be talking about April onwards of this year, 2024. So I think I'm going to have to call this a close at this point. So just to recap what we have managed throughout this, though, we've managed to, from the browser side, we've allowed ourselves to add, edit, delete reviews into that Pouch database, which auto replicates to Couch. We've also looked at how to inject a value from a server action down into a CouchDB, which again, obviously one data connection will then replicate to the PouchDB. We've looked at one of the methods that we can use to replicate back by implementing a changelog, and we've looked at a synchronization routine which would synchronize that changelog, the entries within that CouchDB back into a MySQL DB. So we've covered pretty well everything that we could in relation to how to move data around these various database types. So if you've managed to stay with me right through to the end of this, I think, not quite sure, but I think we're at about an hour and 45 minutes. Thank you very much, and congratulations for putting up with me that long. And I say I'm going to call this now to a close. So thanks for joining me, and goodbye.